Welcome back to Budget and Bling, the series where we take the Commander pre-constructed decks and upgrade them for a little or a lot. Today we're going to talk about Undead Unleashed and the Budget and Bling upgrades that I would make to immediately make this deck more competitive, and the video starts right now.
Highest level of gratitude to our patrons who power the channel through Patreon. Check out the Patreon link in the description to learn about monthly giveaways, VIP Discord access, and even our official playmat.
Hello and welcome to the day. Thank you for spending your time with us. Welcome back to another episode of Jake and Joel Are Magic. I am Joel. We're going to go over the Budget and Bling upgrades for Undead Unleashed. But before we do, if you would, consider hitting that like button if you like the video by the end of it. Hit that dislike button if you don't. Let's take a look at this commander. Oh boy, do we have a pretty solid zombie tribal commander here. Wilhelt the Rotcleavers, 1 black, 1 blue, and 2 other for a 3/3 zombie warrior. It says whenever another zombie you control dies, if it didn't have Decayed, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token with Decayed, and at the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice a zombie, and if you do, draw a card. Wilhelt does a little bit of everything that is good in Commander. It creates creature tokens, and it lets you draw cards for not that big of an investment. In a self-contained aspect, Wilhelt is creating the zombie token that you then sacrifice to draw a card and keep the cards a-flowing so that you can just keep playing your zombies onto the battlefield. Out of the box, this is a zombie tribal deck, so that's what we're going to continue focusing on. We're going to make this a zombie tribal deck with Wilhelt at the command. We're going to go over the budget upgrades that I would make to this deck and the expensive upgrades that I would make to this deck, and make sure you stick around because we're going to go and look at the cards that I would take out to make room for some of the cool stuff that we're going to talk about. The first budget upgrade that I would make is Vizier of the Scorpion. This passive ability on this creature at the bottom. Zombie tokens you control have Death Touch. This came from War of the Spark, where amass was a keyword. You created zombie armies as part of that mechanic, but all we really care about is that Vizier is going to give all of our zombie tokens Death Touch. This deck already makes a lot of zombie tokens through the commander, through some of the giant sorceries, through some of the other creatures, and so all of them having Death Touch is setting up very favorable attacks for you, which is what you want to be doing. I would also run Curse of Shallow Graves. I like it. It's a political card, and it's going to be creating more zombie tokens for us. Whenever a player attacks enchanted player with 1 or more creatures, that attacking player may put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield tapped. I like this. You're focusing all of your opponent's attention really on like one of your opponents, and you're able to create zombie tokens when anybody's attacking them. This is also very similar to Curse of Disturbance. Whenever enchanted players attacked, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. Each opponent attacking that player does the same. So you're getting more zombie tokens off the second one, but I would say run either or both, just as nice political passive zombie token creators. Next up, I would run this as a board wipe. Necrotic Hex is a 7-mana sorcery, and I feel like it's kind of been overlooked from Commander Legends, but each player sacrifices 6 creatures, and that's up to. It doesn't have to have 6 creatures on the battlefield to cast this, and then you get to create 6 tapped 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. One of my big things about board wipes is make sure that you can start rebuilding your board afterwards, so you're not just wiping everything off for no reason. And this puts 12 power onto the battlefield across 6 bodies right after making each player sacrifice 6 creatures. It's likely that we can time this where we don't have anything on the battlefield, so we're not sacrificing anything, or it's a favorable sack for us and we're getting some value out of it. I really like Necrotic Hex in this card. That one and the Curses and the Vizier all under $1. Now let's talk about Death Tyrant. It's a $2 card. It's a 5-mana 4/6 Beholder Skeleton. This is from Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. It has Menace, and it says whenever an attacking creature you control or a blocking creature an opponent controls dies, you create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. That is not non-token creature. Whenever an attacking creature you control or a blocking creature an opponent controls dies, straight up. That can be your zombie tokens. So anything that is dying on the battlefield is giving you more value by putting another part of your tribe, another creature token relevant to your tribe, onto the battlefield. Plus, Death Tyrant for 6 mana. Return Death Tyrant from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Boom. Not at sorcery speed either. You can do that at the end of your opponent's turn. I love Death Tyrant in this deck. It's fantastic zombie token creator. It's really going to play with some of the synergies that we've got going. Wand of Orcus is another card from Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. I have played with this card and I absolutely love it. 3 mana for a legendary artifact equipment. Whenever equipped creature attacks or blocks, it and zombies you control gain death touch until end of turn. We already talked about how favorable of an attack you'll have if all of your attacking line has death touch. Then whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, create that many 2/2 black zombie creature tokens, and it's got an equip of 3. It's a little bit expensive the first time you play it and equip it, but I have gotten so much value out of this equipment. Whenever it deals combat damage, create that many. That is brutal. You're creating way multiple black zombie creature tokens every time the creature holding the Wand of Orcus is connecting. Love this artifact. It's a $5 artifact right now, but I would recommend it go into this deck. Undead War Chief is a zombie lord that I think you need to pick up. 4 mana for a 1/1. Zombie spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, and zombie creatures you control, including the War Chief, get +2/+1. So it is a 3/2 as it enters the battlefield, and it's making all of your zombies cheaper. I'm a big fan of Undead War Chief. Anytime you can have any sort of anthem on this deck where you're building a lot of creature token synergies into it and creating a ton of zombie tokens, in our case, any kind of anthem that you've got is going to be very strong. Undead War Chief, $5 card. Go and pick it up. It's from Plane Chase, that copy that we were looking at. Ebon Death Draco Lich is 4 mana for a 5/2 flash flying zombie dragon. It enters the battlefield tapped, so you can't use it as like a surprise gotcha combat trick kind of thing, but you can cast it from your graveyard if a creature not named Ebon Death died this turn. So on a turn after it has died, you can cast it for 4 mana with flash from your graveyard. EOT on your opponents, play it. You've got 5 power in the air, ready to attack when you untap. This is a very good zombie. I like this zombie a lot, and it's only $6 right now as a mythic from a recently released set. So I would say this is going to have some EDH playability going forward. If you want to build a zombie tribal deck, go ahead and pick up Ebon Death earlier and sooner rather than later. Now, you know I had to include Grave Titan. I love this creature. It's a fantastic creature. I included it, nerds. Don't nitpick me. 6 mana for a 6/6 Death Toucher. When it enters the battlefield, you put 2/2 black zombie creature tokens onto the battlefield. The only downside of Grave Titan in this deck is that it itself is not a zombie and playing with your synergies. However, you're putting 10 power onto the battlefield for just 6 mana, and your 6/6 is always going to attack favorably with that death touch. At the very least, it's going to take out whatever big thing blocks it and survives. Plus, you got a ton of recursion in this deck, so you're going to be able to get it back anyway. As for the Bling upgrades, all of these are over $10. Everything that we just talked about was $10 or less. Tainted Adversary is going to start us off here. It's a new one from Midnight Hunt. 2 mana for a 2/3 Death Toucher. When it enters the battlefield, you can pay 3 any number of times, and when you pay this cost 1 or more times, you put that many +1/+1 counters on Tainted Adversary, then create twice that many 2/2 black zombie creature tokens with Decayed. I like this because it's decent early and it's decent late. You're always going to have a good play with this regardless when in the game you're actually drawing it. Currently it's an $11 card. I do think this will see some standard play, and so it might be higher price in the short term than it will be long term, but I like any card that's going to give me value early and value late, and it's going to sort of scale with the game as it goes along. Lord of the Undead is another anthem. We already talked about anthems and the power level here, and this one's no different. 3 mana for a 2/2 zombie. Other zombie creatures get +1/+1, and you can pay 2 and tap it to return a zombie card from your graveyard to your hand. Recursion, Anthem, it's also a zombie, so it plays with the synergies. I'm a big fan of Lord of the Undead. $11 for that one. Kalidas, Trader of Get, has been a good EDH card. It's been a sideboard card in extended formats. 4 mana for a 3/4 Vampire Warrior with lifelink. Not a zombie, but if a non-token creature an opponent controls would die, instead you exile that card and put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield. So it's keeping creatures out of our opponent's graveyards, which is huge. It's exiling those so they're gone, and it's giving a 2/2 black zombie creature token to us. Plus, Kalidas has the ability to pay 3, sack a vampire or a zombie, which is really all we care about, to put 2 +1/+1 counters on Kalidas. So with that lifelink ability, if you can keep growing the Trader of Get, bigger and bigger swings, that's a lot of life total that's coming back to you from any life that you're losing. After the $12 Kalitas, we've got $14 for Rise of the Dark Realms. It's a 9 mana sorcery that says put all creature cards from all graveyards onto the battlefield under your control. I love this as a big finisher swing. Huge, just absolutely get every creature out of all the graveyards. Go ahead and put them onto your side and hopefully win the game that way. Rise of the Dark Realms joins a couple other high-cost sorceries that are in this deck, so make sure you're running enough mana rocks or anything that's going to help you with mana in blue and black so that you can really consistently hit these giant sorceries on curve, because they're going to be game changers, and Rise of the Dark Realms is no different. This is kind of a bummer to draw early in a game of EDH. You might want to consider that before you put it into your deck. You really do want to be able to cast this late, but if you can, it should be a very big power move that puts you in the driver's seat. 14 bucks for that. Let's talk about the $15 Scarab God. 5 mana for a 5/5 legendary creature god. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses X life. Each opponent, love that. And you scry X, where X is the number of zombies you control. Hell yeah, love that. You pay 4 to exile a creature card from a graveyard, and you create a token that's a copy of it, except we get our relevant creature type on it of black zombie, and its power and toughness is 4/4 across the board regardless. Plus, with Scarab God, when it dies, you return it to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. So Scarab God, if it's just getting killed, it's not getting exiled, you are getting it back in your hand and you can recast it for 5 mana. The Scarab God would be a really good candidate for an alternate commander for this deck. Wilhelt's fantastic, don't get me wrong, and I love that draw card ability, but this one is interchangeable. Either of these could be the commander and either of them could go into the 99. There's also 2 other options I think would be good for that. Jisa and Giralf, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, is 4 mana for a 4/4 ETBs. You put the top 4 cards of your library into your graveyard, and during each of your turns you can cast a zombie creature from your graveyard, so that's really, really strong. This could be an alternate commander or also go into the 99. Same thing with Grimgrin. I love Grimgrin, just the flavor of it. It's a big silly zombie that I just really like. 5 mana 5/5, enters a battlefield tap and doesn't untap during your untap step. You sack a creature and put a +1/+1 counter on it and untap it. And whenever it attacks, you get to destroy target creature defending player controls, then put a +1/+1 counter on it. So this is probably the least of the options as far as value goes, but it's a really fun commander to play. You have to sort of suit it up, and it's just a big beat stick. It doesn't really give you a ton of like card advantage value like Wilhelt can or Jisa and Giralf can, but regardless, good to consider it for the 99 and maybe even as your commander. Continuing on with the expensive upgrades, 24 bucks is going to get you a copy of Cabal Coffers, and look, we have a lot of really expensive sorceries in this deck that are very great haymakers, and we want to keep playing them, so make sure that you've got the ability to make a lot of mana, and Cabal Coffers is going to let you do that. You pay 2 and tap it to add a black for each swamp you control, so this one can really ramp you up in these colors. Kindred Dominance is a $25 tribal sorcery that's fantastic. You choose a creature type, destroy all creatures that aren't of the chosen type. So we're going to choose zombies, and we're going to destroy everything but our board. I love Kindred Dominance. The whole Kindred cycle is pretty good for tribal decks, but I specifically like this card in this deck. Even though it is 7 mana, you're going to get a ton of great value off of it. Speaking of great value, Liliana Dreadhorde General. It says at the top passively, whenever a creature you control dies, draw a card. Boom. That's not non-token, that's any creature. She also allows you to create zombie tokens by ticking her up 1. You can -4 to have each player sack 2 creatures, which, you know, we'll get to draw cards for those 2 creatures dying if we have creatures on the battlefield when we activate this. And then her ultimate's crazy. Each opponent chooses a permanent they control of each permanent type and sacrifices the rest. So it's this big board wipe, but I promise with Liliana, you're paying 6 mana to have that passive ability of your creatures dying and then drawing you a card and then creating 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. That's mostly what you're going to be doing. In a pinch, though, that each player sacrifices 2 creatures can be brutal, especially if somebody's playing some sort of Voltron strategy or just has like their commander and a mana dork out. Ace them both. This is a fantastic walker for EDH, and you should definitely put it into this deck. That's $26 to pick up Liliana. Mikaeus the Unhallowed is the most expensive upgrade I will recommend at $40. It's a zombie cleric, and it prevents humans from dealing damage to you and being able to survive. That's pretty nice. but that bottom ability is what we really want. Other non-human creatures you control get +1/+1 and have Undying. This isn't going to count for our tokens, but for any of our creature cards that die and want to go to our graveyard, instead, it's going to come back from the graveyard to the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it. Really dig Mikaeus the Unhallowed. Plus, if you're running Mikaeus the Unhallowed, you might as well go ahead and drop Triskelion into the deck along with Walking Ballista. And that's going to give you an infinite damage combo that you can win with. As far as the cuts go, I'm going to start with Eater of Hope. It's a 7-mana 6/4 flying demon, so it's already really expensive for just a 4-butt. For 1 black mana and sacrificing another creature, you can regenerate it, so it does have some survivability. And then you pay 3, sack 2 other creatures to destroy target creatures. So it's supposed to be this recurring, you know, sort of sacrifice engine / destruction engine for target creatures. It's not bad. It just doesn't have a relevant creature type to our tribe with zombies, and I'm just not a fan of it for how expensive it is, so I would chop this one. Same thing with Overseer of the Damned. It's another decent card. 5/5 demon. It's got flying. When it ETBs, you destroy target creatures. So you get a 5/5 flyer, plus you get a destruction for 7 mana all in. That's not bad. And then whenever another non-token creature an opponent controls dies, you get to create a tap 2/2 black zombie creature token. So it's pretty good value, but there's just too much top end in this deck out of the box, in my opinion. And so some of the giant top end had to get cut. That's why I cut Eater of Hope and Overseer of the Damned, just so that we can lower the mana curve of this deck a little bit and have some earlier turn plays. What I chose to leave in the giant mana slots were the big sorceries that were creating a ton of zombie tokens so that we can go that route. Fleshbag Marauder enters the battlefield and forces each player to sacrifice a creature. I've had some games where this card has really shined when I can get a nice little recursion engine on it and recast it every single turn, sacrificing itself so I can recast it from the graveyard and making our opponents sacrifice creatures. It's just not one in this deck that I think I want to leave. I want to go with that like zombie token army with some anthems. That's kind of the direction I'm leaning my zombie build on this. So I would cut Fleshbag Marauder. I'd also cut Spark Reaper. This is a solid sacrifice outlet that lets you draw a card, but Wilhelt the Rotcleaver comes with this ability, so we can take this out and make room for really any other card. Midnight Reaper comes to mind as a nice little passive way for when your creatures die to draw cards. I think that Spark Reaper could come out. I also think that Gleaming Overseer could get removed. This deck does run Eternal Skylord, which is like Gleaming Overseer and like Vizier of the Scorpion. Vizier of the Scorpion is the one we looked at the beginning of the video that gives all of our zombie tokens Death Touch. The Eternal Skylord gives all of our zombie tokens flying, and this one gives them Hexproof and Menace. That's fine. I think that we could take this one out. I think you could also leave this one in, but if you need some chops, I like a lot of the value that a bunch of the other cards give you, and so I would cut Gleaming Overseer. You should also note that when I do these videos, I don't cut any of the brand new cards, any of the cards that were printed specifically for this commander deck, this pre-constructed deck. I don't cut those out because they're brand new and I want to try them. So this is a card that could stay in if any of the cards that were printed specifically for this one, if those can come out, that one can come back in. Then Ruthless Deathfang. It's not a relevant creature type to what we're trying to do. And it says whenever you sacrifice a creature, target opponent sacrifices a creature. This is a nice little 2-card wombo combo with Wilhelt the Rotcleaver, because it gives you the ability to sack a zombie, draw a card. Ruthless Deathfang then says you sacked a creature, now target opponent has to sack a creature. I just cut it because it was some of that top end. It's not relevant to our creature type, and so I just didn't personally want it in the deck. Distant Melody lets you choose a creature type, then draw a card for each permanent you control of that type. This is a fantastic card draw spell, don't get me wrong, but Wilhelt has draw a card built onto him. So I want to leave Wilhelt as our like main card draw engine. We've got some really good card draw on black spells. I don't think we really need Distant Melody, because potentially, and this is kind of how I'm looking at it, this card could miss. If there's after a board wipe and you have no cards in hand and you top deck Distant Melody, that's going to be frustrating. You would rather just have like Sign in Blood, draw 2, lose 2, than Distant Melody. So I cut this deck. I cut that card from most decks that I play. And then Aether Spouts. This is supposed to be some sort of pseudo board wipe, but we put Kindred Dominance in here, so this card could come out for Kindred Dominance just like 1-for-1. Instant speed, you put each attacking creature on its owner's top or bottom of their library. They get to choose. So you don't even get to really control whether the creature's gone or potentially going to come back. It does wipe all the attackers off the board at instant speed, and it's a little bit of a tempo play, but I would just rather them be gone. Those are the budget and bling upgrades and cuts that I would make for Undead Unleashed. Let me know down below which zombie I did not put into this deck that you think should be an inclusion. If you liked the video or you think it helped you at all, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. It really helps us out. Other than that, I'm tapped out, and I'll catch you later.